Greetings, and now for a change of pace from all the wonderful technical presentations that we've had so far. I am going to tell you about a program that RCA sponsors, that I'm the chairperson of, that hopefully leads to young, technically talented people growing up to be just like the technical speakers we've had here all morning. That's the hope and that's the goal. So I'm going to let you know exactly what the RCA Youth Activities program is all about. And if you see something that especially inspires you or that you want to know more about or how you can get involved, I'm purposely leaving this slide up here a little bit longer before we begin so that you'll know where to contact me. And hopefully you do get some kind of an inspiration of what we can do to ensure the steady flow of talented young people. And I'm here to tell you how I've done it. Okay. Well, we know we don't get to choose the times that we're born into, but we do get to choose how we participate in and contribute to them. And more than a dozen years ago, my Youth Activities Committee and I decided that our mission would be to showcase and support our technically creative youth. And since I had already taught a ham radio program in a New York City middle school, we combined all of this experience so that we could share with you how we go about recruiting, retaining, and supporting youth in technology through the fun of amateur radio. So again, if you see something that tickles you or inspires you and you'd like to know more about it, that's where you can contact me. And I officially deputize everybody in this room. If you are aware of a talented youth that you think would make a good speaker that I can showcase and help support across the country at the many forums that I do, contact me and put me in touch with that young person. Okay. Here's how I did it. So you may either, if you've got a teaching background yourself, or you head up as a volunteer with a youth group, or you know of a scoutmaster, any bona fide youth group that wants to know how to get help and support through RCA's program, you may want to pass along some of these tips that I'm sharing you first about how I did it in the school that I taught. Smarts, hearts, and sparkle. I wrote the curriculum in New York City of how to incorporate every area of the school's curriculum in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade through the fun of ham radio in the classroom. That's the smarts of it, the educational value. And that's part of how you would go to convince a principal or an administrator to let you bring this into a school. Science, language, arts, social studies, geography on a need-to-know basis. Now, the geography part of it is really interesting. It makes it relevant. If there's a hurricane going on in Puerto Rico and we're on the radio speaking with somebody, and he says, oh, I have to go, my roof is about to cave in. My next lesson with that class would be, where is Puerto Rico? And then why was he afraid of the hurricane? What is a hurricane? In other words, I adapted what they were experiencing to the school curricula to the appropriate grade level. And that's how I got to be doing it for 30 years. In a big New York City middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, language arts, speaking clearly and succinctly on the radio. social studies, current events, and so forth. The heart's part of it is nobody knew what ham radio was when they walked in the room. So everybody's starting out on an equal level. They don't have to be afraid that other children know more than they do. Everybody starts out equally. And they always knew that in my class, it was a safe environment where we were going to have fun and a new adventure. But fun is defined by me. It doesn't mean we're going to be sitting there throwing spitballs at each other. It means you're in for an exciting adventure that you'll probably never have in any other class. So this was the fun that we had and why it was a viable part of the school program. If you were in this school, you were coming through introduction to amateur radio, either in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. It was not taught as a licensing class. It was mandatory. It was not an elective. At some point, you were coming through my program. And we tied it into all aspects. Those of you who are hams in the room, you would know of Gordon West. He and I ran the CQ All Schools Net, where children got to speak with other school children and citizens of other countries from all over the world. And we did get to participate in many of the NASA programs, which for me was just phenomenal. All the fabulous lessons. And on the right, that's Steve Nagel, who has since passed away, an astronaut who loved what we were doing so much that he became a consultant on my RCA Youth Activities program for a while. And the philosophy always was relevancy and having fun. Again, fun defined by me. Okay, parents would get involved as well. Any child who speaks at one of my forums, I must also have a conversation with both parents to make sure that they're going to follow all of my instructions and know what's expected of them and so on. On here, you see, just on a regular conversation on the radio one day, on the upper left, that's astronaut Jay Apt, who said, "This was so much fun, Carole. I enjoyed speaking with your kids. I invite you to come to the Johnson Space Center. We're pre-flight in the next couple of weeks, but after that, you can always come and visit." Well, I don't get invitations. I don't know about you. I don't get invitations like that every day of the week. So the next day, I made arrangements to go, and I did, and I went. And he invited me to come up on the diving board on the WEDF, the big wireless environmental training facility that I have there. And when he waved me on up, he said, "Come up here, Carole. You'll have the best show and tell to go back to your kids with." And that, of course, was an experience of a lifetime. And where else do you get experiences like that? And it all was through the radio, being in the classroom. To the right are different museums we go to across the country. Bottom left is we did a youth forum at Stanford University one time, and the next forum ended up being with the college amateur radio club. So wherever we can, these are all kids who have been interviewed by me that we get to meet with, support them. If all they needed were a few more ARRL books, license exams, and so forth, we send that to them. This is all through the RCA Youth Activities program. And then soldering techniques. Whenever we're doing something like that with one of my classes, I bring in other people. Of course, you have to know by your school district what you're allowed to do with things like that. But we used to have soldering. And this is during the school day. This is not a club that we had. In total, I had 12 classes every term. And in each class, up to 40 students. So do some quick arithmetic. That's 950 students a year that went through this program. And 30 years. And I loved every second of it. So because it was always new, it was exciting. If you know someone who wants to incorporate it, but doesn't know how to approach a local school or how they could do a program similar to mine, put them in touch with me. It doesn't have to be on the scale that I do it. But once you get the foot in the door, your biggest sellers of the program will be the kids themselves because they love it. They love that program. Okay, in scouting, I call your attention to, on the left side of the screen is the Girl Scout amateur radio patch. So the Girl Scouts now have their own as well. And I've had many speakers from the Scouts telling all the great fun amateur radio projects that they get involved with. So again, if you know someone who's interested or is part of the Boy Scouts, definitely refer them to me. We've donated over the last few years over 100 handheld 2-meter radios to Boy Scouts, to Boy Scout troops. Okay, of course, all of this again is through RCA. These are different pictures I throw up to show the nice young ladies that we always look to support coming through the program. Once you speak, now that was the teaching experience that I bring to this. But as far as the RCA Youth Activities goes, if you know someone, again, a youngster who's talented and wants to get up and speak and be showcased, refer them to me. Special partiality always to the young ladies. And now I share with you my experience with hundreds and hundreds of kids across the country. There's pretty much just as many young ladies in amateur radio, almost as much as there are young men. And in all my experience of being involved with the licensing exam, because you did not have to get a license in my program, the idea was to expose them to what fun it could be and lead to other technical pursuits. So you didn't have to get a license, but I encouraged those who were looking to get it. On the left, a young cadet from West Point contacted me who had heard about RCA and wanted to get involved. So they came to one of our banquets a few years ago when we were in New York City to find out more about the RCA radio program that we sponsor. So we've had a lot of fun doing all of this. And if you appear at one of my forums, you become an RCA Young Achiever. And especially to the students who are out here or parents, I'd like you to know we now have a new initiative, the RCA Young Achiever Scholarship. If you are in fact designated to be one of our young achievers, you can go on the Radio Club of America website, go to Youth Activities, and see if the youngster or if you yourself qualify to get that scholarship grant. Okay, at the Technical Symposium, just like here, we're going to always highlight either a former young achiever or a present one that I think would add to whatever the theme of the symposium would be. And if you notice the bottom left, those of you who are hams, that's Bob Heil on the bottom, a very big supporter of our RCA Youth Activities program. And on the upper left, you can see 1 year, 2 of my high school young achievers invented, I love that word, invented a pole climbing robotic device that could change light bulbs in an emergency. And that was years ago that they did that. And at that technical symposium, sitting in the audience was a patent attorney who came up to me at the end and said, could I speak to these kids? I'm a patent attorney. Here's my card. And I said, no, don't give me the card. There's the dad over there. Give him the card and take it from there. But the opportunities for networking, wherever we have these forums, and I see some of you shaking your head because you know, it's phenomenal. It's a great opportunity when we feature these young people. So again, see if you can come up with people that you know who might benefit from all of this that we offer them. Okay, not to embarrass him, but one of the speakers you'll be hearing from is Divyam. I know Divyam since he was about 13 years old, and so I did that purposely because you'll be meeting him soon. These are some of the different forums and banquets that we feature the young people at, and there's the big RCA Young Achiever patch that at Dayton, ICOM as one of our huge, biggest sponsors, gives the children a book bag, and that RCA Young Achiever patch gets hot synced onto it. And the top is one of my young achievers who was invited by our own Chip Cohn when somebody in the Dayton audience heard Austin's talk about fractal antennas that he was studying at the age of 14. Chip's friend was sitting in the audience, told Chip about the presentation, and the next thing I know, a call from Chip, and he invited us the young man and myself to go to his lab to see the fractal antenna research, where it originated from. Where else but an amateur radio, and through all of this networking can something phenomenal like that happened. So again, I'm trying to point out all the really great networking experiences. Now, Hamvention, this past May was my 33rd annual youth forum at the Dayton Hamvention. It would have been the 35th, but it was closed down, of course, for 2 years. And here's samples of the different forums that we've had with the kids. I usually get about 8 young presenters at each of the Hamvention youth forums. Now, if you look at the bottom in the audience, you can see that first row is some of the kids receiving some of the many gifts that they receive from ICOM and MFJ. It's like Christmas morning the next day, plus they get a stipend check from RCA Youth Activities for appearing there. It's a fabulous experience for the youngsters. On the top is Bob Inderbitson from the ARRL also. He and I work together on many projects, again, in the sponsoring of youth. Also Dayton, the young gentleman on the top there is Tom Jost, who was 14 when he came with a sponsor from NIAR in India, amateur radio. They sponsored him to appear at my youth forum. He was accompanied from India to appear. And believe it or not, he's still in touch with us. He's 22, 23 years old now, and he's going to college in this country in Colorado. Stayed in touch and always asked for support when he needed it, and we always give it. He's an RCA Young Achiever. Internationally, this is Dhruv Reba. He was 6 years old when I first featured him at the Dayton Hamvention. He has dual citizenship with Nepal and the United States. He's now contacted me for a college recommendation. So it's great because the kids stay in touch. And we're working on initiatives to keep helping them at the different stages. Next to Drew's picture on the bottom is a blind ham radio operator who was so taken by the presentation of that pole climbing robot. Don't forget, this was about 10 years ago. It was really exciting technology. He wanted to come up and feel the device himself. And so we stopped the show and made sure we let that happen as well. On the upper left is the youth booth, because a lot of people in the audience want to speak to the children, and we never have time and date, and it's only a 3-hour forum. I say only, we always run over. So we set up a youth booth next to the RCA booth so that people from the audience could come and speak directly to the young presenters. Okay, and this is the most recent one we did in May. These are all the young people that we sponsored this year. You can see the prize table in the back on the left. We had some siblings doing presentations. And on the right, not to embarrass anybody, the young girl in the picture of me, that's Audrey McElroy, who's now all grown up and is here to give the next presentation. But that's when I met her at the Huntsville Hamfest years ago. Okay, these are the different initiatives that we have. I and my committee go around the country to different schools to promote technology through the fund of ham radio. We visit museums, we support scout programs, STEM programs, STEAM programs, when the kids design their own QSL cards. If a principal says, but how are you incorporating all the subjects? Again, before you approach an administrator, you will call me. Don't reinvent the wheel. I'll give you all the buzzwords. You're going to go in and teach listening skills and concentration skills. These are all the buzzwords that administrators and schools love to be hearing about. And at the bottom, I believe that was at the AWA Museum that, again, we took pictures of and told the kids about, and there's signs from the youth booth. Now, just to show you the importance of this and why I loved it so much and why the school administration loves it so much, there are little code keys, we call them, little code practice oscillators that were custom designed for me because the big Radio Shack with the wiring and the heavy telegraph key, it wasn't practical with 40 students. So I would use it with the custom made ones. It was a little 8 ladies earring box. It was a gem of an idea. And the speaker and the keyer, everything was in it. And so I would give one key to every other student and pair them off. So I would say to student A, after we started learning the letters of Morse code, you know, you send it to your partner and then they would switch. Inevitably, for 30 years, the first time that happened, somebody in the class would say, I cannot hear him. I'm hearing her and him and everybody else. 20 kids are using the key at the same time. I can't hear him. And I would say, too bad. Just listen, concentrate only on that person sitting next to you. Who teaches concentration or listening skills anymore? An administrator will smile ear to ear when you present that as a selling point. And at the end of the term, somebody would inevitably say, remember when we couldn't hear the person sitting next to us? And I would say, yeah, I remember. For 30 years, I remember it. But you're teaching an important skill, and the parents know it as well. Okay, this is a little strange always, but I share this with you. If you know a teacher, a scout leader, the leader of a youth group, who really deserves to be honored, who's working with amateur radio. A few years ago, the folks in Orlando came up with the Carole Perry Educator of the Year Award. And last year's winner was a principal from the Netherlands who in retirement is doing what I was doing here, taking kids around and teaching them emergency communications for their neighborhoods, for their communities. So every year it's given to it. That application is now on the Hamcation website. So if you know an educator, it's a really nice accolade to win something like this. Please nominate them. And I don't get to pick who the winner is. I'm one on a committee of several who make that choice every year. But it's wonderful to honor the people who are out there on combat duty, on the front lines, actually working with young people to instill the fun of technology. Okay, there's somebody else we know. There is Ray from ICOM, clearly the biggest supporter of the Youth Forum all these decades. And scholarships, contest winners, there's Audrey again. The young man on the bottom right is an example of something I'm really proud of. We also feature special needs children at my forums. To me, every child is special. But sometimes children have a problem with stuttering. This young man had a problem with speech aphasia. He studied for the better part of 10 months rehearsing once I said, okay, I would give him a chance to come up and speak. And it puts a smile on your heart. When somebody like that gets up, the audience, you could hear a pin drop with close to 200 people in that Dayton audience. I didn't point him out ahead of time. I just made it clear, you know, when these kids get up here, they're not used to public speaking, and they all come from different backgrounds and abilities. The audience knew what I was talking about once he got up, and he got a standing ovation. And I can't even share that with you without giving myself a chill, because that's how good it was. Next to that is also a young picture of Chris Brault, who was one of the winners this year of the RCA Young Achiever Scholarship. Okay, future goals that we have. This was a very interesting group on the bottom, all siblings, and all four of them, as young as they look, have appeared at my Dayton Youth Forum through the years. We love the interchange from one country to another. We're trying to bring the world of ham radio to different clubs. So we also go around the country speaking at different clubs, service clubs that would like to know, how do we approach our local schools to get in? I must have done 20 Zoom presentations on that particular topic in the last couple of months. And here's a tip, and I'll guarantee this one. If you go into a school that's gifted, and that's always a good place to go because the kids will be responsive, et cetera, and you may get a couple of licensed amateurs out of it. My advice is go into an underprivileged school, into an underperforming school. They'll be thrilled to have you come in. And you know what? Those are kids who don't probably have role models. Why don't you become one? Go in as a volunteer, and I promise you will be surprised at the reactions you get. I know because I've done it and the people on my committee have done it. That's a sure, wonderful thing that you could do, even if you're not going in as a group. And again, speak to me first. I'll tell you what the selling points would be to speak to an administrator about it. Now, I love this at the bottom. 1 year before 9/11, in a 6th grade class, I did 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and I always try to give them something provocative to think about, to analyze. One time it just occurred to me, and I asked this class, how do you think you're talking to people all around the world, to children, to adults, to other citizens, different cultures, different backgrounds? Why do you think that's such a good thing to be doing? And one little boy came up with, if we're all on the radio talking to each other, maybe we won't be fighting with each other. And that was pre-9/11, and I never forgot that quote. And I believe it. I believe it. I've seen it, so I know that that's true. And then I put, I believe it's still on, when we celebrated 30 years at the Dayton Youth Forum, A lot of the young people from the 30-year period stay in touch with me. They're adults with children of their own that they introduce me to. The rule is only they can grow older, I can't. But when they introduce me to their own youngsters, I always ask them, well, what are you doing now? 9 times out of 10, they're in a technical occupation. They're in the wireless industry on some level. So I got the idea for the 30th anniversary to make a video with the help of a Hollywood producer who's a ham friend of mine from the Tim Allen Show. And we produced a video of all these kids 30 years later. What are they doing? And that video, because it's a great incentive to show if you're going in with a group of kids, or you want to convince parents in a PTA to sponsor a program like this. And they all are reporting on this video how what they learned in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade exposed them to things they never would have learned about, and where it led them to different careers that they have, many of which are in the wireless industry. One year, a young man walked back into my class. When I say young, in his 20s, didn't recognize him at first. He introduced himself. I was in your 7th grade class. I never would have known what radio astronomy is had it not been for the ham radio class. I said, oh, that's wonderful. What are you doing now? Oh, I'm working on the Hubble telescope at the Goddard Space Center. So if you ever want to know what motivates me, it's stuff like that, when they come back and love what they did or what they experienced in those classes, because it's so different. So that video can be found on that what we've got on the bottom there for you, and that's it. So again, if something even gave a spark of an idea about you or your club or somebody you know, please, please contact me. One of the other contests that we run, if you know a talented youngster, Young Ham Lends a Hand contest. One of the basic tenets of ham radio is volunteerism. And so to encourage that in young people, once a year, it's sponsored by Ham Friends. Once a year, we pick a winner. Well, there were so many wonderful contestants for this last year that we gave it out twice. They each get a check for $100, and it looks nice on a resume for a job or for college. So there's a lot of different things we can offer if you're looking to motivate, stimulate, get into a school. A lot of ways that deal with encouraging young people into the fun of technology. And please, you're not bothering me, please contact me, and I'd be happy to help you get started, because different school districts, different regions, different states, different rules, different insurance concerns. Contact me first, and I'll be happy to help you.
Thank you very much, Carole. Let's thank our speaker. So we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Does anyone have any questions, either online or read?
It's not really a question. It's more of a statement. Jim Breakall gives his best to everybody here at the symposium. He's watching online and giving us feedback through the webinar. But Carole, he wanted me to pass on a message to you, and I'll read it here. This is one of the most important activities that RCA does. She is a real hero for all that she does. I just wish I could be there to give her a big hug for all that she does. Jim, WA3FET.
Oh, he gets a rain check on that.
Because Jim couldn't be here, I would be glad to receive that for him, Carole.
Does anybody else have a comment or a quick question?
So some high schools aren't embracing new curriculum, as you know, and it's very controversial.
Yep.
So a lot of high schools have decided to create extracurricular clubs.
Yes.
Which are not school sponsored, like athletics, cheer club, all that.
Right.
So these rely solely on the volunteering of somebody to go in and run that club.
Yes,
So the kids are encouraged to join up, and you can see this already in success with robotics.
absolutely.
There is, if you can find a high school that doesn't have a robotics program after school, non-high school sponsored, no insurance requirements, doesn't even, they will just provide the property to do the club.
Right. And then again, different insurance regulations, because I get that all the time, of people from
Yeah.
different regions asking me about that.
I guess it's more of a comment that at this point in time, it might be easier to just flow with the politics than try to beat against it. With changing curriculum and adding curriculum like a class or something as your.
Yeah, again, it's like everything else in life. It's how you present it
Right.
to the person with the authority to make it happen. And I share another surefire way with you. Go into the local PTA, the Parent Teachers Association. They're the ones with the money for the fundraising for the school. Through the years, I had all of those mothers' children in my program. So I never wanted for equipment, whatever I needed, their children were in my program. Plus, I also threw out the idea, kids, when you study at home, study with a parent, let them test you on the Morse code, let them ask you questions, and I would give them different study techniques. And then I would surreptitiously say, study at home with the person who has the money. Because if your mom or dad gets a ham radio license, let them study with you and they can come and take the test too. Then you know you're going to have radios in your family, and it works. It works. That was a proven way of doing it. So again, run ideas by me before you approach an administrator. Thank you.
My name is Madhavan Swaminathan. I'm with Georgia Tech. One of the biggest challenges that we have across the nation today is that the enrollment in our electrical engineering programs is going down, while the enrollment in computer science is going up.
Yep.
And as you know, wireless communication is a very important part of electrical engineering. The question to you is, whatever you do, how do we make sure that this happens in every single school in the country?
Well, I'm not quite that ambitious, but you would be surprised over three plus decades of my doing this, the difference that I see of how widely accepted all of this is. Because when I started doing this, oh no, you're going to bring young people into ham radio, it'll become like CB. Well, now it's the politically correct thing to do, is to bring youth in. And the best way of doing it is convincing in your own little world first, because I'm not going to change the world, but I will, in my own little world, work on doing that. And then it just keeps getting amplified because one kid talks to another. We were in constant contact with schools in San Francisco. Well, what happens when there's an earthquake? Does your mother come? How is that handled? And it was such a success that success breeds more success. So again, in your own little world, start out showing the success in a neighborhood and a community, and it spreads because it's a good thing. Okay, now I want to announce as a surprise to the next two speakers, who are former RCA Young Achievers, that DX Engineering has sent over a $100 gift certificate for each of you. That's another big sponsor of the Youth Forum. So see me later, That's thanks to, we have Tim Duffy and we have Ray Novak in RCA. How could we lose, right? They know the value of all of this, so we thank them.